So let me ask you a question. The last time you prescribed a lunge for a patient or a client, did you consider how the setup impacts their performance? Furthermore, did you consider how the setup increases or decreases their range of motion? It's not usually a thought that we think about, right? We think of lunges as an exercise that's really just more strength-based. But in this video, we're going to discuss how a lunge can be purposely prescribed to improve internal or external range of motion deficits. So before we can strategically prescribe a lunge to improve IR or ER deficits, we first need to take a step back and understand what's going on during a normal lunge. And for this video's purpose, and in this example, let's consider a split stance stationary lunge. So we're not thinking a reverse lunge, a walking lunge, a rear foot elevated, but a good old-fashioned split stance stationary lunge. Now, what we need to consider is that at the top portion of the lunge, we are in an overall externally rotated bias position. And as we go through the descending phase, we're moving more and more into internal rotation. At the pelvis, if we consider the left leg being forward, at the top part, like we said, we're in more of an externally rotated position. But as we go down, the pelvis starts to turn. That's the key thing I really want you to remember. As we move and turn towards something, we're going to start to pick up more internal rotation. So the innominate bone on the left side as we turn starts to go into internal rotation, adduction and extension, as the opposite, the contralateral side, goes into flexion, abduction, and external rotation. Now, this is really important to remember because during any lunge that you're doing, you're always going to be starting from an ER bias position, going to an IR bias position, and then if you're really going through an extreme range, you might start going into that external rotation phase again. So now you might be wondering, how do we strategically improve IR or ER measures? Well, we do that with how we hold weights. You can strategically hold them to either increase or decrease the amount of turn. Remember, like I just said, the more turn, the more IR. The less turn, the less ER. But here's what you need to remember. You're still going towards that IR, like I previously said. You're just not moving into as much of an IR position. This is how you start to bias and promote external rotation. So now let's consider two scenarios so we can integrate these concepts successfully. But remember, we can't honestly do it successfully if we're not starting with our assessment. The assessment should really be your guiding point, and it tells you exactly what you need to do in your treatment and training sessions. So for scenario one, let's consider that our patient or client has decreased internal rotation on the left and decreased external rotation on the right. So as we go to prescribe a lunge, instead of just going through random lunging motions and having them hold weights right by their side, we instead want to have them hold a weight with a contralateral load. What is this contralateral load going to do? Well, think about it biomechanically. It's going to increase the amount that they turn. That turn is going to internally rotate the pelvis or the innominate bone on the left side and increase the external rotation moment on the right. As you go through the range of motion and repetitions, you start to gain range of motion and internal rotation on that left side. Conversely, if we have a patient or client that comes in that has decreased external rotation on the left and increased internal rotation on the right, instead of the contralateral load, we want to move towards more of an ipsilateral load. What does this ipsilateral load do? Well, it's going to decrease the amount that we're turning, right? So if we decrease that amount of turn, we're not turning towards that left as much. We are still going towards internal rotation, right? I really want to make sure that point's clear. But because we're delaying the amount of internal rotation, that's where you get the ER bias. So you can really increase external rotation by holding an ipsilateral load. So I hope you found the video helpful. I encourage you to go back and audit your exercise selections. Are they generalized or are they specific to your patient or client's needs? If you're not sure, start at your assessment. Understand where are their ER and IR deficits, and as you go to prescribe lunges, let's get away from guessing and get away from that generalized stuff and move towards the specificity of movement so you can truly help your patients and clients improve their range of motion.